Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Before Coffee. We are waking up on a Thursday. I stayed up way too late last night and I have gotten no sleep. So, what kind of absurd stuff is happening in the news today? Today on Before Coffee, Pistoletto sculpture destroyed in suspected arson attack in Naples.
U.S. inflation news slows again.
Russian general says he has been fired for telling truth about Ukraine's problems.
Man in a cave in Israel is getting evicted.
An Hungarian bookseller wraps LGBTQ plus books in plastic to stop people reading them.
And in entertainment news, we review Les Claypool and the Flying Frog Brigade today on July 13th. 2023 edition of the comprehensive news of planet Earth on Before Coffee.
I totally put you off by being like, I forgot it stopped recording. But it's okay, we're recording and we're supposedly live. I haven't checked actually if it's actually displaying, but it looks like it is. Okay, great. First story today from staff and agencies in Rome on The Guardian. One of the most famous works by Italian contemporary artist Michelangelo Pistoletto, Venus of the Rags, has been burnt to cinders in a suspected arson attack in Naples. The installation, in which a statue of the Roman goddess of love, beauty, and fertility stands next to a pile of vast-colored discarded clothes, was destroyed where it stood on a display near the town hall in southern Italian city. The mayors of Naples, Gaetano Manfredi, said the fire in the early hours of the Wednesday was an act of great violence which leaves us speechless, and promised the installation would be rebuilt. Pistoletto told the Corriere della Sera daily newspaper that the reasons for the attack could be many. It is a work that calls for regeneration, on the necessity to find a balance and harmony between two minds that are represented on one hand by beauty and the other by consumerism, a disaster, the 90-year-old artist said. He added, "The world is going up in flames anyway. The same spirits that are waging war are the ones that set the Venus on fire." After examining neighborhood surveillance camera footage, police arrested a 32-year-old homeless man on suspicion of arson and destruction of artistic work, according to the Il Corriere della Sera. Okay, so you just found a homeless guy to pin it on. That's what it sounds like. Maybe he was angry at society, so he burned it. Consumerism is what brought me here to my homelessness. So this statue should burn. I think maybe he was just putting up a cig and threw it and it caught on fire. I'll be honest. There are several versions of Venus of the Rags, which Pistoletto first created in 1967, which juxtapose an iconic figure of a classical culture of beauty with the detritus of contemporary society. The first had a concrete or cement Venus, bought at a garden center, covered with mica to create a glittery surface. Others used plaster casts of that statue. One was made out of a Greek marble containing mica, according to Tate Gallery, which owns one of the pieces. Pistoletto is a central figure in Italy's Arte Povera, or poor art movement, and his works have been shown across the world, including London, New York, and Paris. So, that's too bad. It looks like, I don't know what happened, because they have the before and after. The after, there's no statue there anymore. But I think the statue must have also burned. And there's just a pile of clothes, I don't know, a 10-foot pile of clothes, just shaped like this. All gone into ashes. So there's your short story about how art has been destroyed just like our society is being destroyed. How poetic.
A guy named Michelangelo something or other. Right?
Yeah, nobody owns the name Michelangelo, so
Well, I'm just saying that we're talking about one of the, was it 1500s or something when they were painting?
Yeah.
Not the best history person. Inflation cools sharply in June. Good news for the consumers and the Fed. This is from Jeannie Smalek of the New York Times, which is still a paper. They just fired their entire sports department, though. Inflation data released on Wednesday showed a pronounced cooling and offered some of the most hopeful news since the Federal Reserve began trying to tame rapid price increases 16 months ago. The consumer price index climbed 3% in the year through June, less than the 4% increase of the year through May, and just a third of its roughly 9% peak last summer. That overall metric catches big declines in gas prices and a few other products that could prove ephemeral, which is why policymakers closely watch a different measure, the change in prices after stripping out food and fuel costs. That measure, known as the core index, offered news that was even better than what economists had expected, sending stocks higher as investors bet that the news would allow the Fed to raise interest rates by less than they otherwise might have. And why are they still raising interest rates is even a better question. You've already slowed inflation, did this job, in theory, but why do you keep raising prices? I have no idea. They're trying to drive unemployment up. I think they're legitimately trying to throw people out of work. The core index climbed 4.8% compared with the previous year, down from 5.3% in the year through May. Economists had forecast 5% increase. So they're wrong, which they are a lot. On a monthly basis, the core index climbed at its slowest pace since August of 2021, which is basically right in the heart of the pandemic. This is very promising news, said Laura Rosner Warburton, senior economist and founding partner at Macro Policy Perspectives. The pieces of the puzzle are starting to come together, but this is just one report, and the Fed has been burned by inflation before. They have. Slower inflation is unquestionably good news because it allows consumer paychecks to stretch further and inflicts less pain at the gas pump and in the grocery aisle. But Federal Reserve officials still trying to assess whether the cool down is likely to be quick and complete. They did not want to allow price increases to linger at slightly elevated levels for too long, because if they do, consumers and businesses could adjust their behaviors in ways that makes more rapid inflation a permanent feature on the economy. Given that, why are we given that? It just seems like
I don't know.
That seems like a made-up principle, actually. Economics is not a science. Given that, they may be cautious in interpreting the news. Officials have signaled in recent weeks that they are likely to raise interest rates in their July 25th, 26th meeting because they only have one tool in their toolbox. Ms. Rosner Warburton said she thought a July move was still likely, that the fresh inflation data could lay the groundwork for a more extended pause after. She added that a cooling in car prices and slower rent increases should keep the moderation inflation underway, and she forecasts that Fed would not raise interest rates again this year following the July change. The June inflation slowdown comes as a few key products and services posted steep price declines. Airfares fell 8% compared with the previous month. Used cars and trucks were down 0.5%. New vehicle prices were flat. It's better than having a new vehicle that's flat.
Yeah, no flat tires.
The cost of housing prices that measured its consumer price index realize rent prices is coming down sharply. That is expected to continue in coming months. More broadly, price increases for a basket of services, including energy, food, and housing costs, a metric that Fed watches closely, continued to slow in June. But in spite of all the recent progress, inflation remains above the rate of increase that was normal before 2020 pandemic. The economy still retains momentum with a strong job and wage growth, which could give companies the wherewithal to keep raising prices. That is why the Fed officials are hesitant to say they have won their battle against inflation. That is the stupidest way to look at it that I've ever heard in my life. We won a battle against inflation. Okay, sure you have. It would be a mistake to declare victory. No shit. Too early or at all. Because, we're done. We fixed the economy. We'll never do anything again. That's declaring victory.
Wish.
They're never going to stop meddling with it. So stop declaring, acting like there's a final victory somewhere. Your story.
Final victory. Okay.
Final victory against inflation. I don't think so. No, don't work that way.
As
like,
long as economies exist, we're never going to be able to defeat the evil inflation. Okay.
Every time there's a Super Bowl, they have a winner, and you know what they do? Right after the game, they start talking about next season because there is no final. They just keep going. You just keep going. There ain't no final victory. We've been inflation for good. Oh, that's funny. Okay, go.
Okay. In Russian news, Russian general says he has been fired. This is from Peter Sauer and Helen Sullivan from The Guardian. A Russian general has said he has been fired as a commander after telling Moscow's military leadership the truth about the dire situation at the front in Ukraine. As tensions in the Russian army grow in the aftermath of the Wagner Group's short-lived mutiny, Maj Gen Ivan Popov, who commanded the 58th Combined Arms Army, which is fighting on the front in Ukraine near Zaporizhzhia, said in a voice message that he had been fired after he brought up problems on the battlefield, including the lack of counter-battery fire, as well as deaths and injuries the army was suffering from Ukrainian attacks. Popov's emotional address was published late on Wednesday by Andrei Guryov, a retired Russian colonel, general, and Duma deputy. It was not clear when Popov had recorded the message or who its intended recipients were. Without naming them, Popov appeared to attack the head of the army, Valery Gerasimov, and the defense minister Sergei Shoigu, the two of the country's most powerful military men, accusing them of stabbing the country in the back. As many commanders of regiments and divisions said today, our army was not broken through the front, but our most senior commander hit us in the back, thus treacherously beheading the army in the most difficult period, Popov said. Popov added that he faced a choice with his superiors, to keep quiet and be a coward or to say the way it is. Due to this, the seniors likely felt some danger in me and instantly in one day put together an order to the Minister of Defense and got rid of me. The open criticism of the military leadership by a senior Russian commander is rare and will dent the sense of unity that the Kremlin has been eager to project. Following the Wagner chief Yevgeny Prigozhin's abortive rebellion. While Prigozhin has been openly insulting Putin's most senior military men for months, senior members of the regular Russian army have refrained from such criticism. Rumors have been swirling among Russian military bloggers that the Kremlin has sidelined Gerasimov, a veteran Russian commander whose resignation was one of Prigozhin's core demands during his rebellion. But judging by footage Moscow released this week that showed Gerasimov and Shoigu at work, Putin has kept his two most influential military men in their positions. Some senior Russian officials on Thursday appeared to express sympathy for Popov. Commenting on Popov's statement, Andrei Tuchak, the Secretary General of Russia's ruling United Russia Party, said the general's conscience was clear. Russian can be proud of such generals, Tuchak added. The lawmaker, however, blasted Guryov, who first published the audio, for creating a political show. Popov's statements come amid mounting uncertainty within the Russian military. On Wednesday, a senior Russian official said Sergei Surovikin, a top general who had not been seen in public since the Wagner mutiny, was resting in a grave under the ocean. No, he didn't say that part. He's resting. He's just resting. He's pining for the field.
I was gonna say that.
I'd like a new parrot. Andrei.
What kind of talk is that?
Andrei Kotopolov, the head of the State of Duma Defense Committee, told a Russian reporter on Wednesday that he was not available right now. Surovikin, who is known to have a close relationship to Prigozhin, was being interrogated by the security forces at an undisclosed location over his links to the warlord, according to media reports. The British Ministry of Defense suggested that Surovikin had been sidelined following the mutiny, citing an evidence that increased public profile of his deputy, Viktor Avzulov. On July 10th, the ministry reported Avzulov was shown briefing Gerasimov in a televised appearance. Avzulov's first appearance with Gerasimov despite serving in the role for 4 years. Avzulov's increased public profile, while Surovikin's whereabouts remain unclear, adds further weight to the hypothesis that Surovikin had been sidelined following the mutiny. Wagner's rebellion ended when a deal was struck offering amnesty for Prigozhin and his mercenaries, along with permission to move to Belarus, but Prigozhin's current whereabouts are unknown. Flight tracking data of his private jets, seen by Guardian, suggests he has flown several times between Moscow and St. Petersburg, where local news outlets have reported sightings of him. Also on Wednesday, Moscow confirmed that Gen Oleg Dovskov, the deputy commander of Russia's southern military district, was killed in Ukraine earlier in the week during a missile strike on the southern occupied city of Berdyansk. Dovskov is the second Russian general to be killed since the start of Ukraine's counteroffensive. In total, more than a dozen Russian generals have believed to have been killed since Moscow invaded Ukraine. But how many Ukrainian generals have been killed? We need the scores. Because, at the end of the day, war is like sport, I suppose. But...
Well, once it...
That's fine.
Well, another guy that needs to stay at tall buildings.
Yep.
Yep.
Flying lessons for Prigozhin.
Stay away from windows. Is that it?
Yep, that's the end.
Right on. Of course, I noticed yesterday in a little sidebar, that everybody that was against the cluster bomb things is now for the cluster bombs.
Huh.
Because they're using them on these Russian trenches. They're entrenched there in Kuwait, and there's no way to get them out of there except with cluster bombs. So yeah.
I can't wait till some poor soul freaking walks around there and then gets exploded by a dud.
In 50 years, a little kid get his leg blown off, but
exactly. But it was worth it.
Right now, we gotta get the Russians out of there, and then we'll clear the battlefields later. You
can get those giant rats. Have you seen those? The giant rats they use in Africa to hunt mines. They're like this big. I want one so bad, but they're probably like not for trading overseas.
They have robots, giant rats.
No, they do. They really do. They can smell the bomb.
Then we're doing a story. Then we're doing a story about Kuwait overrun with giant rats.
Yeah.
They eat my kids. Anyway. Okay, this is from AP. This is from a really hard to pronounce names. Let's try it. Oh, maybe not. This is by Elon Ben Zion Nerio Shalit. Okay, that wasn't too bad. It just seemed long. After a half century, Israel moves to evict squatter from his cave home on the beach. This is just cruelty, if you ask me. After a half a century, Nassim Kalan has
half a century, he lives there now. Fuck you. He's not a squatter.
50 years is his goddamn home. Leave him alone. Has transformed a tiny cave in the Mediterranean beach into an elaborate underground lab filled with chiseled tunnels, detailed mosaic floors, and network staircases and chambers. You see a guy that he wasn't wasting his time. He was doing something. Leave him alone.
That's definitely his house now. What the...
Need to stop. He lives in one-of-a-kind artistic creation, which is a popular destination for local curiosity seekers. In Cologne, 77 is quick to welcome visitors into a subterranean home. Now, Israel's government wants him out. Why? They can't get a nickel out of it? 50 years after Kalan moved into the home, Israel's Environmental Protection Ministry has served him with an eviction notice, saying that the structure is illegal and threatens Israel's coastline. Okay, how's it doing that? Instead of encouraging me, they're denigrating me, Kalan said, and sitting in his mosaic tiled living room, rolling a cigarette. The sun glimmered on the sea outside his west-facing windows. Kalan was living in a tent along with Herzliya, along the Herzliya beach north of Tel Aviv in 1973, when he says he began scratching into the sandstone cliffs and moved into the cave he carved. Over time, his simple hole in the wall turned into a real-life sandcastle on steroids, filled with recycled wood, metal, ceramic, and stone. Nearly every surface of this main course is covered with elaborate mosaics made from discarded tiles of every color that he collected from dumpsters at Tel Aviv over the years. Recycled glass bottles serve as decoration and insulation. Every wall in the labyrinth is complex is curved and stairways bend and branch through the bedrock to chambers to different design and purpose. The complex has plumbing, a phone line, and electric lighting in its many rooms, and Calon insists his construction is sturdy. From the stones I quarry I made a cast and built the wall. There is no waste here, only material that's the logic. Everything is useful, there is no trash. Calon said he received a demolition order back in 1974 that was never carried out. Since then, he has never heard any opposition from the authorities until last year. The eviction is on hold until later this month to give him time to appeal. He acknowledges he never received a building permit, and City Hall has shut down a beachfront restaurant he opened years ago. He even opened a restaurant! But what the fuck? Well, you gotta go, buddy. That cave's gonna collapse. Well, it's his cave. If it collapses on him, that's his problem.
Who cares?
He acknowledges he never received. Okay, he acknowledges he never received a bullying permit, and the City Hall never shut down a beachfront restaurant they opened years ago. But his main argument is that the local authorities connected his cave to electric grid decades ago. They actually ran cable to his cave. I'm not leaving here. I'm ready for them to bury me here. You stay, man. Stay. A gruff but amiable chatterbox with gray beard and beret. I have nowhere to go. I have nowhere home. He's 77. Even when he lives to be 100.
The guy die there. It's fine. What the hell?
Who cares? Calon Cove is on the outskirts of Herzliya. I already said that wrong 5 times. A seafront city 8 miles or 13 kilometers north of Tel Aviv. It stands out in contrast to luxury homes that dot much of the B-side town, one of the most exclusive addresses in the country with a dire housing crunch. A few hundred meters north of Calon's cave is a Crusader castle, a site of a battle between Richard the Lionheart and Saladin over 800 years ago, as well as an abandoned facility that once belonged to Israeli military industries, a defunct government arms maker. The facility where explosives were developed and tested was abandoned nearly 30 years ago after a massive explosion in 1992 that killed 2 workers, damaged hundreds of buildings, and shattered most of the windows as far as Tel Aviv. Last month, another explosion blew a massive crater in the sandy soil not far from Calon's cave. Well, if he wants to die that way too, that's his choice. If he wants his cave blown up, that's his choice. He's made it himself. Okay, I guess we're in the story there because we know where we stand on this. They're acting like it's an environmental thing and blah, 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 blah. You know?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, okay. He's a person who made a life for himself out of nothing, and you're gonna throw him out on the street and go, hey, go live in a home somewhere with a bunch of people you don't know. Yeah, your story.
Okay. In more people being ridiculous news, I guess, we've got a Hungarian bookseller who doesn't like LGBTQ people. Hungary is actually very famous for having a lot of anti-LGBT laws, which is really disappointing because they're probably actually incredibly gay there. In Eastern Europe. Yeah, Eastern Europeans. You know,
all those laws are made by men who are afraid that they are gay. Every damn one. Yep.
This is an article from Flora Garamvolgyi in Budapest. Hungary's largest bookseller has started wrapping books that feature LGBTQ characters in plastic to prevent customers from opening them in stores after it was taken over by a private foundation with close ties to Viktor Orban. Libri, who is also the country's largest publisher, said in an email that the packaging was a request from the Hungarian Consumer Protection Authority to follow the controversial child protection law that came into force in 2021, and as we know, children cannot open wrappers. The bookstore chain is the first in Hungary to use the transparent packaging, though a few rural bookshelves have started following the practice. Actually, I think that happened in America too for a while. I generally remember books being wrapped in plastic before. 2 years ago, the government passed a widely criticized law banning LGBTQ people from featuring in educational material or on TV shows for children. The legislation prohibits the promotion and display of homosexuality and gender reassignment, though the definition of promotion is vague. The law also has come under fire from conflating homosexuality with pedophilia. According to the interpretation of Hunary Society, a Hungarian organization focused on LGBTQ rights, a parent could break the law solely by buying a child or a young adult novel that features an LGBTQ character. In 2021, another bookstore, Lira, had to pay a €600 fine for selling a children's book by the American author Lawrence Schimmel, depicting the day in life of a child with same-sex parents. The bookseller failed to indicate that this was a family that is different from a normal family, according to Hungarian officials. After the government-funded Matthias Corvinus Collegium, an educational institution, bought Libri, sources in Hungarian publishing said the bookstore chain contacted several publishers to find out whether they believed their books complied with the requirements of the child protection law. The state-run Consumer Protection Authority recently fined Libri 1 million forints, or £2,280, for improper display. Libri claimed that the authority forced it not to only sell the book separately from others, but to do so in a closed packaging. Works affected by the use of plastic wrapping include Mikkel Ostow's Riverdale series and the British author Alice Oseman's graphic novel Heartstopper, both of which have been turned into Netflix shows. Benice Redavati, a government minister, criticized Heartstopper on Facebook, where he wrote, "In the book Heartstopper, you will find a comic of boys kissing. Parents don't know if they are being provoked or if their child is being converted." Esther Polgatti, Hunary Society's legal program director, said, "The major downside is that these books will leave the shelves where they belong. They will not be placed in the youth section, but the adult literature section, so the target audience will never notice them." Adam Andraskaniskar, an LGBTQ journalist and activist, said, "The whole event has also put pressure on Hungarian activists. In Hungary, it's often the civilians who are kept part of the culture alive, and this is what has to happen now." In April, 15 EU member states joined together a legal case against the anti-LGBTQ child protection law, which was described as disgraced by the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Yes. So, first of all, the internet still exists, so I don't see this actually stopping any spread of homophobia or homosexuals. The spread is not going to stop. Second of all, what did it say here earlier? Oh yeah, protecting children. This also comes up when it comes to teaching sex education in schools, right? A lot, and I know it's happening in the U.S. because I'm on Twitter, but they're like, let's not teach sex education to children. They don't need to know about that stuff. And then every single study by like child psychologists, normal psychologists, anybody who has any knowledge on this subject is like, if you don't tell children about things, they don't know it exists because they're children, and then bad things happen to them because they don't know it's bad, right? If you don't tell people gay people exist, or that pedophilia exists, or that sexual assault happens, children have no idea it's happening until they're freaking 14, and they're like, oh shit, my uncle's been touching me this whole time, and I had no idea that I was bad, and now I'm traumatized because that wasn't supposed to be happening. Yep. So
it's religion. It's religion every time, I'm telling you. It's these people thinking that
children ignorant is not helpful for children. Children are supposed to be taught things. That's why they exist, to be taught. So not teaching them things is just cruel. Your story.
Yeah, well, if people are comfortable in their own ignorance, they're going to want their children to be the same way. That's sad because sometimes the worst people for raising children is their parents. Right? Their parents failed, and they're going to convince their children that you're going to make up for my failure. Didn't you realize, Allison, that you got to make up for my failures?
I'm sorry. I don't know what failures you have, but I'll try.
Don't worry. I'm working on new failures just for you.
Oh, no.
All right. So in concert review news, Colonel Les Claypool, this is from Glide magazine. Neil Ferguson. Nice, easy to pronounce name, Neil Ferguson. Perhaps let's read the headline. Let's read the headline properly. Colonel Les Claypool's Fearless Flying Frog Brigade takes psychedelic flight in Oregon. All right, here we go. Now we can read the story. Perhaps it's the nostalgia that comes in a later age, but the last few years have found Les Claypool obsessed with revisiting and recreating the music of his idols. The renowned bassist convened his main band Primus around the massive tour that included a full album cover of Rush's A Farewell to Kings. Now that's ambitious. Now Claypool has reunited his beloved Fearless Flying Frog Brigade for a tour that includes the sandwich performances of Pink Floyd's 1977 album Animals. Clearly, Les has been feeling reflective and is looking to share that state of mind with his fans, who will gleefully laugh at whatever he chooses to do. Of course, this tour is something of a double trip down memory lane, as it marks the first time the Frog Brigade has toured since 2003. All of this cause for celebration on Sunday, July 9th. Colonel Claypool brought that celebration to the McManus Grand Lodge in Forest Grove, Oregon, for one of the last stops on the leg of this leg of the extensive summer tour. These days, the aptly named guitarist Ripley Johnson can usually be found playing with his cosmic country outfit, the Rose City Band, but he has briefly returned to the space psych outfit Moon Duo to open a handful of shows for the Frog Brigade. Donning their signature all-white outfits, the group delivered a set that was heavy on trance and droning grooves that was ambient space. And times they made their way through songs like Flying, The World, The Sun, Night Beat, and Fever Night. Johnson led his guitar, weaved through the synths. Well, this is about the opening band. Sanya Yamada, and while John Jeffrey never let off his beat, proving to be the duo's secret weapon as they eased the audience into the night with a set that went from dreamy to mellow to euphoric to danceable. During their extended time off, being 6 weeks in an 8-week tour meant that the Frog Brigade was primed and ready when they hit the stage and dropped immediately into the funk-filled psych prog blues of the Buzzards of Green Hill. Though the lineup is reconfigured for this tour and fine saxophone player Skerrick absent for medical reasons, any question about the length of dismissed as Sean Lennon laid into a slide guitar descent only to be matched by the unctuous organ work of Harry Waters. Amanitas found Claypool grabbing the spotlight with his dark and squiggly bass lines, while David McAllister was a notably early standout as a wonky and sinister march that found Mike Dillon blasting off into saxophone space and Claypool laying down a bass work that is thick as molasses, even teasing the Primus tune Southbound Pachyderm. Through the night, the sound felt muffled, and the fans let it be known that the frequent call-outs, even though it was clearly a choice from the venue. Before the band got into the performance of Animals, Lennon led the band on a complex and mysterious work of psychedelic power pop. Blood and Rockets Movement 1, Saga of Jack Parsons Movement 2, To the Moon. Much like he did with Primus when covering Rush's A Farewell to Kings, Claypool chose to stay faithful to the Pink Floyd classic. Of course, his distinctive bass was a constant presence, and Lennon was able to grab more than his fair share of impressive guitar solos. But for the most part, the band executed the album close to the original. Where they excelled in the performance was in their ability to lean masterfully into the nuance and slow-building suspense of the album's compositional nature as a whole. One of the standout moments came when Lennon talkbox solo on Pigs, 3 different ones, to add the extra layer of trippiness to the song. After the journey through Animals, Claypool moved off stage and returned wearing his demented pig mask for the dark carnival madness of Precipitation that felt like the actual equivalent of tumbling into a washing machine with an element of grunge and one of Dylan's wildest xylophone solos of the evening. Hendershot found the band bringing together elements of skate punk, ska, and swing for a dastardly delight, while Walters let the B3 organ talent shine on a surf rock instrumental. Two of the biggest highlights of the night came on the tail end of Dee's Diner, taking the audience into a world of demented culinary chaos that veered from a loungy jazz to jam to a punk blowout closer. This was followed up by Claypool wearing his disco ball helmet and banging his amplified pipe on a jam-heavy namesake, Wamola. And that's basically the review. The Les Claypool tour has been touring all summer. You can check out their videos on YouTube, which I have, and I watched them play the entire Animals, the entire thing. And I was like, this is pretty good. I don't think Pink Floyd does it this good.
Sometimes imitation is better, I guess. So to say.
Well, Pink Floyd probably doesn't have Les Claypool on bass.
Yeah.
They don't, and Roger Waters tours by himself, but and if he's a bass player, but probably Les Claypool's a little level above as a bass player. But go ahead, your story.
All right, in more culture news, Hollywood Actors Union recommends strike as talk deadline passes. SAG-AFTRA committee decision raises prospects of first simultaneous strike by writers and actors in more than 60 years. The threat of AI is real. This is from Lois Beckett in Los Angeles. The union representing Hollywood actors has recommended strike action after a midnight negotiation deadline passed with no agreement as the industry braces for the possibility of the first simultaneous strike by Hollywood writers and actors in more than 60 years. In a statement, the Screen Actors Guild America Federation of Television and Radio Artists, or SAG-AFTRA, the union, which represents 160,000 actors, so like a small portion of a country worth of people, said its negotiating committee had voted unanimously to recommend a strike. The national board will decide on Thursday morning. It said, after more than 4 weeks of bargaining, the Alliance of Motion Pictures and Television Producers, AMPTP, the entity that represents major studios and streamers including Amazon, Apple, Disney, NBC Universal, Netflix, Paramount, Sony, and Warner Bros. Discovery, remains unwilling to offer a fair deal on the key issues that are essential to SAG-AFTRA members. Said the companies have refused to meaningfully engage on some topics, and on others completely stonewalled us. Until they do negotiate in good faith, we cannot begin to reach a deal. We have no choice but to move forward in unity, and on behalf of our membership with a strike recommendation to our national board. The board will discuss the issue this morning and will make its decision. A strike expected to have immediate impact on the publicity efforts for the summer's top films. The Thursday evening premiere of Oppenheimer in London has been moved to the start of an hour earlier so the cast can attend it regardless of the outcome. Other major commercial films, including Barbie and Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, have already hosted their world premieres, though their stars will be restricted from participating in further promotional events. The strike might also delay the Emmy Awards until late autumn or even next year, industry publications reported. Disney has announced that a 15th of July premiere of its movie Haunted Mansion will still take place at Disneyland regardless of the strikes. I mean, Disneyland couldn't give a shit about unions. They're famous for not caring, or Disney, I should say, not Disneyland. Disneyland is a totally different thing, but... Though the film's actors, including Lakeith Stanfield, Tiffany Haddish, and Jamie Lee Curtis, will not be present. San Diego Comic-Con, scheduled to begin on the 20th of July, will be affected as well. Before the vote, Hollywood's top acting talent had made it clear they were willing to strike. In late June, a letter from a Hollywood A-listers, well, of course the A-listers are willing. Oh yeah, I have like a freaking, what is it called? An investment account where I've invested, a bunch of money. So I have a bunch of money stored up in my bank account. You guys go ahead and strike. Okay, what about the Z-list actors? I guess I just have to give up and continue working at the diner. These Hollywood actors, including Meryl Streep and Jennifer Lawrence, urged their union leaders not to settle for a mediocre deal in what they saw as a historically important contract negotiation. The simultaneous strike of writers and actors expected to cause serious disruption to the industry, with major ripple effects for other works and the Los Angeles economy. The Writers Guild of America strike, which started on the 2nd of May, is entering its third month with no end in sight. Before negotiations with studios began this year, the membership of the Actors and Writers Union voted overwhelmingly to authorize a strike if necessary, a sign of deep frustrations among Hollywood's creative workers over what they say are declining shares of studio profits, increasing precariousness of their jobs, and concerns about being replaced by artificial intelligence technologies. The beginning of the strike was marked by strong solidarity from Hollywood's other unionized workforces, including the powerful Teamsters Union, and SAG-AFTRA members showed up solidarity at the Writers Guild of America's picket lines even before their own strike was called. Yes, this is very important because right now what's happening is they're asking freaking ChatGPT to write scripts, which is just theft. Because the ChatGPT cannot come up with its own ideas. It looks up other people's ideas and then puts them together and says, yeah, this is totally new. I stole the script from Lord of the Rings and the script from Wheel of Time Season 1, and I put them together. Wow, a new story. A new fantastical story, you know? I stole this entire plot point from Succession, but this is totally a new script. So, not saying humans don't copy from each other, right? But it comes from a deeper place than just analytical synthesis, I guess. But what did you want to say?
I was just saying, isn't that what writers already do? They take an old idea and it. So what's the difference? How are we going to notice? We won't notice. AI wrote this, okay. And, the writers already do that. I saw this in I Love Lucy in 59.
Yeah, I can agree that there are repeatable motifs and themes that do happen in writing. But the point is that somebody should be paid for those, I guess.
Yeah, it's true. But
otherwise, you're just making money off of stuff that you just stole from the internet, right? The difference is, at least writers are being paid. When an AI does it, no one's being paid. And they're just making money. So
the last writer's strike, well, maybe not the last one, but here's what I know: a writer's strike. There was a writer's strike a few years ago.
Yes.
And most television was reality television anyway, and so they just made them make more reality television, and guess what happened? We got The Apprentice, and then we got Donald Trump from the writer's strike. Legitimately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
Because they don't have writers on a reality show. You just make shit up. Anyway.
But now the actors are also going, so who's going to be acting? No one. So yeah, it's just going to be reality shows. And
nobody watches television, and yeah.
I mean, honestly, I think TV should have died long ago, but I understand that streaming services are keeping it alive in a way, so.
To be clear, you mean commercial television. You don't mean the actual technology. Because if television ceased to exist, we couldn't watch each other.
Well, I'm using a monitor, so.
It's still television. It's literally television. Okay.
That's actually the LCD screen, actually, I believe.
Yeah, we're sending communications that you see through the airwaves, television. Okay. It's not through magic little cords or anything. It's coming through radio frequency, believe it or not. All of this. Yeah. Radio frequency, all of it. Just bouncing through the air, free as a bird. Or freer than a bird, because birds have to land. Okay. Now, for this day in history, in 1713. Oh, wait, were you done?
Yeah, I was done.
Spain and Britain signed one of the treaties of Utrecht, giving Gibraltar and Minorca to Britain in 1713 on this day, on Thursday, July. It's Thursday the 13th. In 1787, U.S. Congress passed the Northwest Ordinance, which laid the basis for the government of Northwest Territory for the admission to its constituent states to the Union. Northwest Territory included Canada, so that didn't really happen. Not totally. 1832, Henry Rose Schoolcraft identified the source of the Mississippi River as Lake Itasca in Minnesota. In 1861, General George McClellan's Union troops defeated Confederate forces at northwestern Virginia, an area subsequently became West Virginia. In 1878, the Treaty of Berlin was signed, replacing the Treaty of San Stefano, which ended the last of the Russo-Turkish Wars. In 1939, backed by trumpeter Harry James, American singer Frank Sinatra recorded his first single, From the Bottom of My Heart. In 1942, American actor Harrison Ford was born. In 1985, a benefit concert Live Aid was held simultaneously at Wembley Stadium in London and JFK in Philadelphia, organized by Bob Geldof. Mid-year, the event drew an estimated 1.5 million television viewers and raised millions of dollars for famine relief in Ethiopia. In 2010, George Steinbrenner, owner of the New York Yankees, died at the age of 80. In 2016, Theresa May, the Conservative Party leader, it seems like a long time ago, became the second woman Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. In 2017, Chinese writer and human rights activist Liu Xiaobo, who advocated for democratic reforms in China, was awarded a Nobel Peace Prize in 2010, died at the age of 61, and featured event was in 1793, French revolutionary Jean-Paul Marat was assassinated. The leader of the Montagnard faction during the French Revolution was stabbed to death in his bath by Charlotte Corday, a young foreign supporter who was subsequently guillotined. So, stabbed to death by a woman in his bathtub. Talk about being vulnerable. July 13th, 1934 is the birthday of Wole Soyinka, the Nigerian author. Also birthdays today, Mei Ying-jeou, president of Taiwan, was born in 1950. We covered Harrison Ford. Patrick Stewart, British actor, and a relative of ours, was born in 1940. He must be related. He's Scottish. His name's Stewart. Jack Kemp was born, American politician and football player, former vice presidential candidate. Was born this day in 1935, and famous racist Nathan Bedford Forrest, Confederate general, starter of the KKK, was born this day in 1821. Rotten hell, you pile of shit. Okay. Who cares about some Confederate general? Like, I give a crap. Some traitor was born. Okay, sorry Confederacy, you lost, and you're still lost, and you still lost, and tomorrow you wake up, you still lost. Anyway, what day is it today? It's National Beans and Franks Day. Beans and Franks. It's a National Barbershop Music Appreciation Day. All right. And it's National Delaware Day, as this is the day Delaware became the first state to join the Union. So it's Delaware Day. That's it. Door deal.
Well, no, that's it. This has been Allison here from the Netherlands, and we have handled all the news today that we possibly can handle because we're getting so angry now, I think. Good luck to the Screen Actors Guild, the Writers Guild. I really hope them the best because I don't want one dude making all the money from art and honestly killing the soul of art. I mean, that's kind of what's happening, right? People what are they called again? The production companies are like, we want to not have any people involved in making stuff, and we just want to make money. And I'm like, well, that kind of ruins the whole point of the thing if you're just taking the soul out of it. But anyways, I digress. We will see you on Friday for the end of the week wrap up of what the hell's going on today.
And in 20 years, when our TV shows are torture of the week, you can look back on this day and go, yeah, I remember we used to have TV shows that made us laugh instead of going, who are they torturing today? Anyway, this is Roger getting ready to eat me a free breakfast from the hotel and free coffee on the July 13th, 2023 edition of Before Coffee. As we've been. Be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and notify buttons, and follow our other channels, Toxic Alley, History of Gravy, and Scratchy Old Records.